I'm going to just do the introduction here then, guys. So welcome to this Financial Technology and Research and Education. We are the University of the West of England, and this is for the Bristol Tech Festival 13th of November. And I'm Christopher Carr. Outline for today, so I'm not going to be leading this little talk, but there will be a talk by UWE's very own Kathy, or Yanri Zhu, and Hisham, both from different departments, on what UWE offers, and that will be about 10 to 15 minutes. After that, we'll have a 5-minute break for panel setup and questions. And then we have this panel, a very exciting panel. So we have a startup company with a guy with Bunk, a guy called Tom Woolard. We have Nirnit Singh from Deloitte, and we have Hisham from UWE. So we have this small little panel, and you'll be invited to ask questions. And we also have some questions to get this going. And then we have a networking session. So without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Kathy here, and I'm going to go offline and let you carry on. So please, Kathy, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself as well?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. I'll just put my slides up. Okay, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kathy, also known as Yanhui Zhu. I'm an economist from UWE Bristol. I'm also the joint program leader for financial technology. In this brief session, I'm going to talk about our program. I'm going to focus on financial industry's demand for future talents and our approaches to teaching and learning to help students develop the skills, behaviors, and knowledge required by future employers. Technology is really changing the interaction between financial institutions and their customers. And also, technology is changing the role of the people who work in the financial industry. A recent report by Financial Services Skills Task Force have found that there is a growing appetite and a need for new skills and knowledge. Changes in the workplace require new behaviors. There have been a lot of results and findings published by various organizations on the future of work and how this will impact on jobs in financial industry. And they all had similar findings. Here I'm presenting some findings from this previously mentioned Financial Services Skills Task Force. This report is quite recent, published this year. There will be some fundamental shift in job roles. For example, leadership roles such as Chief Investment Officer, Chairperson, and Director, they might be replaced by some new roles like Chief Innovation Officer, Chief Data Officer, Chief Digital Officer, and Chief Technology Officer. On the professional middle level, professional roles such as Corporate Treasury, Risk Manager, Investment Manager, and Analyst, they might also disappear and be replaced by Big Data Scientist, Data Engineer, and Web Technologist. There has been a significant increase in the number of technical and digital roles in the sector, and this trend is very likely to continue. However, these roles will not necessarily be filled by specialists. So what will happen is this. Employers value individuals who can work across a range of specialities to realize the innovation and added value that results from the interplay of different disciplines. So in the future, increasing numbers of roles will require a more diverse skill set, a combination of sector-specific knowledge and experience coupled with an element of technology or digital experience underpinned by strong skills and behaviors, those individuals will be in demand. UWE Bristol's MSc Financial Technology program is developed to meet this demand for future talents with a diverse skill set that can combine the technical understanding of data and system with the knowledge of business models of financial institutions and markets. Okay, now I'm going to just talk a little bit more about our program. UWE Bristol offers a 1-year full-time or 2-year part-time master program in financial technology to develop students' knowledge and skills to start a career in financial technology sector. Our program has 3 unique features. It is taught across 2 specialisms, finance and computer science. On the finance side, students will learn about the theories and the practices of banking, finance, money, and investment. Also, students will learn about how financial technology can improve customers' experiences and firms' efficiency and reduce costs. And also, students will learn about the impact of fintech on the society as a whole, and what financial regulators' views and actions are regarding fintech. Hisham will talk about computer science side of the program. Because of this interdisciplinary approach we have chosen to take, students will have the opportunity to choose from a very diverse range of optional modules, both from business school and from the Faculty of Environment and Technology, so that students will have the access to subject specialists so that they can really tailor how they learn to where their interests lie. The second feature of our program is that it is taught using a practice-led approach, focusing on problem solving rather than knowledge testing throughout exams. Students will have the opportunity to work on live in-house projects with business partners and develop close network relationships with potential future employers. The learning will be developed through a mix of industry-inspired case studies, live briefs, creative problem-solving projects, and industry thought leadership in guest lectures. It is developed and delivered. The last feature of our program is this: it is well supported by the industry. The program is developed and delivered in conjunction with industry. In particular, Deloitte Digital, one of the most prominent leaders in fintech ecosystem in the UK, is our course Connect partner. Deloitte not only provides critical review of the program's teaching and learning materials, but also help us to provide industry guest lecturers for core modules and sponsors for interdisciplinary group projects and mentors for fintech dissertations. The program is also supported by the fintech community in Bristol. Bristol is one of the leading fintech hubs outside London and hosts many fintech startups, scale-ups, and established financial firms with interests in fintech. Some of them are involved in the creation of our program and are committed to supporting us delivering the program. So students will have the opportunity to engage with employers through workplace visits and work shadowing, gaining the opportunity to build personal network and develop the skills that employers are looking for. Finally, if you are a prospective student, then here are some information for you. The program will start running in January 2021. There will be a block 0 consisting of 3 weeks of online teaching. And after block 0, the teaching will be delivered mainly, if not fully, online university's policy right now is blended learning, but it may change if the COVID-19 situation worsens. We will let you know once we know if the policy changes. And finally, you will have free remote access to the software used in all modules. If you are a practitioner in fintech sector, then we would love to get you involved in our program. We are looking for sponsors for our interdisciplinary group projects to set questions and tasks for students and guide them to complete tasks. We're also looking for fintech dissertation mentors and speakers for fintech environment module. Okay, and Hisham will elaborate on the industry's involvement a bit later. Thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have any questions, you can ask me or email me. Thank you.
So, Hisham, do you want to make a start with the... Yeah, there you are.
There I am. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see my screen, people? Okay, Chris, I need your feedback. If you see my screen?
Sorry, yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. Right, so thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Chris, for the introduction. I'll make it hopefully shorter and perhaps a little bit less structured, if I may. Chris, you can stop me when you want, please. So I am Hisham, and I am the computer science guy of the FinTech program at the University of the West of England. As Kathy said, I am the joint program leader for the program. I teach computer science and do research in machine learning or AI in general. And so what I'll try to do in those hopefully 5 minutes is to just give you flavor, a glimpse of the tech side of the fintech and how our program we believe is unique in combining or bringing together multiple disciplines in a skill set that we deliver or try to deliver to the students. So the tech side of the fintech, you know, the trends for the coming very coming years. This is not the strategic, trends or pattern of how things are shifting in the future, but just a very immediate move in terms of technologies which are being deployed and exploited in the financial services and finance in general. And I'm pleased to see that my discipline, being the machine learning or AI, forget about the differences between machine learning and AI theoretically or practically, but basically it is the application of algorithms and automation in order to make sense out of data and to make us do better decisions, predict better, and so on and so forth. And you will see that in the next 3 to 5 years, as in that actually, this is from 2019, you will see that machine learning and AI are being invested in the most and exploited and deployed the most in the financial services compared to the other trends and technologies, including, of course, as you're aware of, I'm sure, the Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, the digital banking, the peer-to-peer payments and lending, blockchain and security and cybersecurity technologies and research and development and so on and so forth. And so I'm taking this an opportunity to talk particularly about one side of the machine learning, one application or set of applications of machine learning in the financial services with example, so that hopefully you can see what we see I think I can do this much better. Yeah, these are few examples, and mainly related to online banking and future banking or digital banking. So we talk about more loan approvals with lower risks. How do we know how lower risks are assessed or qualified? The automation of the loans itself or themselves, based on, putting it all together. When we talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence, we're talking about making sense of data, as I told you before, as I mentioned before. And so the underlying fact is that all what we do in either it's banking or buying stocks or commercializing stocks or investing in portfolio or borrowing or lending, all those are transactions, and these transactions are basically a set of data, either structured or unstructured. And so that the conventional way of either giving loans or assessing risk is experts doing the task and looking at the data and looking at people and looking at companies and organizations and making a decision based on their own judgment. Nowadays, we've got those algorithms that artificial intelligence in general is to mimic the expertise or the experts way of doing things on a larger scale. And thus, we end up having an opportunity to facilitate loan automation, because we've got the data, we can learn, we can judge, we can make the decisions, and this is all is going to be done, and in fact, practically now is being done automatically. Then outsmart, these are just simple wordings actually. Outsmart thieves and hackers, fraud in fintech, fraud detection, anomaly detection, online payment, peer-to-peer lending and borrowing, and so on and so forth. Detecting human and not human cybersecurity threats based on behavioral patterns. You see, so many disciplines are put together and analyzed in order to provide a better service, to make better decisions, and to reduce risk. And these are a few examples of companies and startups. For instance, the Ravlin is London-based, and it's fascinating because the Bio Catch, which is a company, I think American company, that looks at understanding human biometrics and combining machine learning algorithms in order to understand or to detect cybersecurity, human or non-human cybersecurity threats. Ravlin, for instance, gives credit cards for people with sparse credit score, and sometimes not even with a credit score. And this is a London-based, basically. Comply with ever-changing regulations. We are moving very quickly into, one example is the Brexit, for instance, and what is coming up. And this is not just Brexit, it is a moving context. And machine learning or artificial intelligence is now facilitating the concept or the practice of compliance with regulations, with rules and laws, automatically. And I've got examples here. Compliance is Silicon Valley, I think, company, and it literally does provide a legal process or a compliant process of transactions, interaction with customers, service-oriented transactions and experience based on the moving compliance, regardless of place, regional, juristical market, and so on and so forth. Customer experience, segmentation of market, competence, providing better experience. Wells Fargo, we always talk about it as the first bank, for instance, to provide chatbots for better customer experience. And chatbots basically is mimicking human call centers or replacing, to an extent, call centers, faster, quicker, and much more precise experience for customers. And then stock market, the dynamics of the stock market, portfolio management, investment management, time series analysis. All these are just a few examples of where machine learning and artificial intelligence, which we are proud to be able to deliver and to train our students in, to provide them with the skills that enable them to look at the treasure, the data, and to come up with ideas and opportunities for better financial services, whether it's regulation, compliance, competence, customer, market segmentation, fraud detection, cybersecurity, automation of the processes, and so on and so forth. Now, my last bit, which is hopefully the last minute, what is that we do at the University of the West of England? And apart from what Kathy said with regards to the underlying theory and practice in finance and in economy and so on and so forth, we decided to bring together two faculties to decide this program and to decide to come up with a coherent mix, in fact, fascinating to be fair, between the theory of finance, the knowledge needed in finance, and also the needed skills coming from computer science, the big data to deal with the massive amount of data that mirrors the transactions, mirrors customer behavior, mirrors people's behavior, organizational behavior, even people's sentiments when we do sentiment analysis, for instance, or sentiments analysis. So the big data, and then the information security, the cyber security, then the blockchain and cryptocurrency, and then the machine learning and predictive analytics. And so when you put all this together with flexible choices being given to our students to experience routes and paths as they deem fit and as they deem appropriate for their own ambitions and careers, we have the data because we've got the Bloomberg suite and we can work on real data. We've got big data lab. We've got a cybersecurity suite, and we've been just recognized by the National Cybersecurity Centre of the UK as a gold provider in cybersecurity. And so this theoretically is a fascinating experience. And beyond that, we are going through our network of sponsors and business partners, including Deloitte, to provide students with a real world experience. Not only are we inviting them to know the theory of these fields, but also to practice them, working on real world problems provided by our partners, business partners, sponsors, to work on loan automation, for instance, to work on fraud detection, to work on the chatbots, to work on better customers' experience, and so on and so forth. And so, as Kathy mentioned, the fintech environment provides the basis for students to think multidisciplinary in a multidisciplinary approach. And then we've got another module, which is an academic year long module, which is a fintech project whereby people, students, researchers, our program students would be working together jointly with partners on real world problems, applying and deploying their learned skills to solve a problem, to make better decisions, to do better fintech, in short. That is one. And the last is university is also providing a context, a hub for you, potential students or actual students, to work on a startup in the fintech field. And so we are providing a place we can host students, we can help in networking, and you can prosper. And so the university is providing, in fact, an ecosystem for fintech future rockstars. I think I can conclude here, and I would be happy to answer your questions in the following panel session. Thanks, Chris.
Sorry, just trying to find the window again. I was obviously messing around. I'm just going to share my screen again with everyone, and we'll have so the next plan is a 5-minute break. So I've been trying to find a nice little image to keep there for the 5-minute break. Hang on, let me do this properly. So yeah, we're going to have a 5-minute break from now. So we'll resume at 11:35, I think. And I thought I would share a nice little screen of Sonic looking at his watch, which took me ages to find because it's not that easy to Google. Okay, we're back. And I'm now stood up because I was making a cup of tea. So we're back now. I just wanted to say quickly, if you are joining this session, just give us a wave or a hello in the chat window or something, just to be nice, just to get involved. We're going to start the panel now. So if the panel members can join me on stage, that would be really nice. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Chris. How's it going?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Apart from my messing up with the time because of the time difference.
Wow, you're in Norway, I believe, aren't you?
Yeah, in Norway at the moment. Yeah, so this is why wood is everywhere. It's just they use so much wood here. While we're waiting for the other guys, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself and your company?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Tom Willard. I graduated from UWE a few years ago, studied economics there. I started a company whilst I was at university called Bunk. We're now sort of running an award-winning startup, and we're disrupting the long-term rental sector. However, being a sort of fully digital platform, Bunk's got various fintech capabilities which ultimately empower our users well beyond the sort of traditional players in the sector.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Tom. And I see we have Nirnit from Deloitte here. Do you want to give us a little bit of a background about yourself as well? Maybe a bit about you and a bit about who you represent as well? I think you might be muted. We can see you, but we can't hear you. Well, I can't hear you unless anyone else can. Okay, well, whilst you're fixing that, maybe Hisham, do you want to give a little bit of we didn't really do the background earlier, so do you want to do a little bit of background on yourself?
Oh yeah, sure. So yes. Go on, Numa. Go on. All right. I shall go on with what you suggested, Chris, until Norman is back. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can, loud and clear.
Yeah, good. So I'm Hisham, and I
I can hear you.
I'm hearing myself.
Do you possibly have this open in two different browser windows?
It may be, yes. Finally, you are the tech guy.
Yeah,
right.
well, you know.
So I've got I've got a PhD in computer engineering, postdoc in complex systems, which is much more studying dynamic systems, and I do machine learning, artificial intelligence, but basically to understand dynamics of natural phenomena. Now, guess what? The fintech is basically a field of exploring, understanding, and based on which also predicting the dynamics of a complex system, whether it's the stock market, the portfolios for investment transactions, and even cybersecurity, threats. So that is me. I teach computer science. I'm senior lecturer at the university. And I co-lead the program with Kathy of FinTech.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Hisham. We're just having a bit of trouble with Nirnit, so maybe I can talk a little bit about me if you want. Unless, oh wait.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Sorry about that. I wasn't too sure what happened there. So background is my name is Nirnit Singh. I joined Deloitte about 5.5 years ago, and I manage the fintech team for Deloitte, primarily in the UK and parts of the European market. We do a variety of different things. So we do fintech partnerships with leading fintechs in the market that we can engage with and work with our incumbent accounts. We are also well known for working in many overseas markets to help establish fintech hubs for governments and regulators. And we also work with many fintechs in the UK and in the European markets to help them grow, scale, and enter new areas and launch new propositions and products. So very happy to be here today, guys.
No, it's great to have you here. So I'm just going to moderate today, and I think we don't need to skip my introduction. But I think the first question I've got on the list, and I think perhaps the most interesting one, or the one that I think you could all add value to here, is what sort of attributes, skills, and knowledge are desirable for anybody wanting to, break into fintech? And I'm not sure who to ask this one first, but let's ask. Should we start with you, Nirnit, and then we can go to Tom and Hisham.
Yeah, I think when I look at the fintechs that we work with, and even the team that we've established, everyone comes in with a variety in different types of backgrounds and skill sets. But I think what I find really interesting with all of them is they're all very keen to learn new things. They're very keen to try new things, and we're able to adapt very quickly to changing market dynamics because of that. So when we're looking at key skill sets, I think some teams will say, okay, or some organizations may say we need engineering, we need developers and whatnot, but I think that's looking at it at a given point in time. I think that if you look at some of the fintechs, as they evolve, they become full-blown organizations. And once they reach a certain scale, they'll need people with business backgrounds, with financial services backgrounds, and risk and control backgrounds. But behind all of that, I think having the right attitude and work ethic, and something that they refer to as the growth mindset, I think is very important.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I think further to that, the growth mindset is certainly what we look for when we're hiring people. I think especially when you're, if you're coming out of university and you're in university now, you don't have 10 years experience to be able to fall back on when you're sort of, applying for these jobs and positions. But what I think is very clear, and especially in the startup environment, is you need people that are ultimately have utmost drive and capability. It's about their attitude more than anything. It's that ability to learn. If they're coming into the role and they're saying, I will hit the ground running, I will jump in at the deep end and happily accept any challenge that comes my way. And I think in order for them to do that, you have to create an environment where, mistakes are acceptable. You have to be pushing people to the end of their boundaries. And, in order to do that, they're expected to make mistakes. But by making mistakes, they learn quicker. So it's a really hard one, because when we, especially hiring sort of graduates out of university, we don't really look at core skills in the same way, because I think it's very, very hard to analyze when you don't have that raw experience. So I think a lot of it, as Nirnit was saying, is around sort of really, really trying to dig into that growth mindset. And I think that a passion for your subject is really, really important. So, whether or not we're hiring someone on the dev side, we're picking into what they're doing in their free time. And if they're developing their free time because they truly love it, it's, well, I'm going to be wanting someone like that in my organization, because they're going to be coming to the table with what's going on in the new ideas, what's happening in other sectors, just because they're looking and learning because they're passionate for it. So, I think, the growth mindset certainly is important.
Yeah. Hisham, anything to add?
Well, I mean, I echo what Nirnit and Tom said. I think I will bring about a wording of scientists in data science, and I'm bringing here another term whereby they said the best data scientist is the best computer scientist of the best statisticians, and the other way around, the best statistician of those computer scientists. And when it comes to fintech, I do believe in terms of knowledge, we come across people who would be good at making sense of data, analyzing and stuff like that, without a grasp or knowledge of what value are looking for, what the application is. And so bringing both worlds, the application itself, the field of where the value is important, and also the methods, techniques, skills, problem-solving abilities together. That makes, I think, a strong candidate for fintech pioneer or rockstar.
Okay, can I just? I'm interested in this question though, so I want to dig into it a bit more. I mean, from a practical standpoint though, do you want people who really do understand the technology, or maybe sometimes you can kind of think there's perhaps a little bit too many ideas without really understanding implementation? Do you want people who really have a deep grasp of the technology here, or do you want people who, are capable or happy with technology, or is it just about, like you said, a growth mindset in terms of growing themselves and growing the company? I mean, what's the more important aspect here? I would ask. Does anyone want to pick up on that?
I'll have to jump in on that one. I think for me, one of the biggest, because, when you're looking at multi-departments here, whether or not you're looking at your operations, your finance, your dev, what they all sort of have in common. And I think when you're working in that startup, they have to be obsessed with the problem. The whole team has to be aligned towards what is that common problem that you're fixing within the team. And I think, therefore, when you're looking at whether or not it's on the dev side or on the operations, it's not about building a product for the product's sake. It's about understanding the users. And I think this is where, challenger banks like Monzo have got things really right. It's understanding the user experience, and it's doing things in a different way. The reason I started Bunk was because I hated the current system. So I'm not going to go hire a load of people who ran the current system to rebuild the system, because I want to rebuild it in a very different way. And therefore, I mean, Tom Bluefield at Monzo, I think, had an analogy around bringing in a lot of those traditional experienced players, but he'd be bringing them in as NEDs, contractors for a month here and there. And I think his analogy was ultimately you need to rinse them as much as you can like a sponge, and then get the next person in, because it's ultimately how much can you learn from their experiences, but you don't want to be anchored with their experiences. You want to be able to design that new way. And I think the way of really doing that is really, really understanding the problem. And then the problem comes from talking and understanding your users.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else want to pick up on that? Or?
I'd add, actually, whether it's technology or solution kit or let's say opportunity, I can recall one of the former US presidents, I think it's Kennedy, who said in 10 years we are going to send a man to the moon and bring him back. And he didn't talk about the space shuttle or the rocket or technology which was needed. So the objective is basically in finance is to make profit, to make better service, user experience, and so on and so forth. And then it is rather important, perhaps equally important, the other side, knowledge of the skills, the technology kit, solution kit, which is dynamically changeable, unchanging, and in transition. And so I think it's both sides, but the focus shouldn't be really on technology. Nowadays, the important dimension is where do you organize, organizational needs, objectives, people's needs, objectives, and technology is just there to, take from, adapt, and so on and so forth. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think all this talk about, your next bank will be a tech company. It's true, but if your traditional bank isn't a tech company by that stage, then they're not going to be around. So I think it's an element of understanding that, when I was studying economics, even only 3-4 years ago at university, the whole way our economy works with our consumption, our imports, our exports, and all our government spending involved with that and the investment into the company, and then you have brackets plus T, and this is still being taught, right? And I think this is one of my biggest problems in terms of that educational piece. Is like the whole way we, from a macroeconomic position, judging economies is with a plus T variable. Now that T variable has more of an impact than everything else involved in the other equation now. And it's changing quicker and quicker, and people don't understand it as much. So I think, it does come back to education and how we can start really, really feeding it back in. And, we don't re-educate on these policies, we'll never be able to regulate the sector. And, then we'll end up with the social media space we've got in the fintech space. And I think, there's a lot of work to be done around that.
If I might just jump in then, because we have been speaking about this, we had another question, which was to do with, do we expect that traditional banks will be replaced by challenger banks in the next 10, 20 years? And I think the person I'd like to ask this is Nirnit, because you're working you probably work with some of the people at these companies.
Yeah. So my thinking is the landscape, the financial services landscape in the next 10 to 15 years will look different than it does today. To say that the incumbents will be replaced is a very challenging presumption, and it's hard to gauge if that's going to happen. But what I can say is that the landscape will look different. I think you'll see a lot of new players that have identified niches in the market, which they're wanting to be very focused on and be the best at in those respective niches. And it's going to be up to the incumbents to decide if they want to compete in that space, either by starting something internally and incubating one of their own companies or initiatives, or acquiring some of the niches out there as well. But I do think the landscape will look different. I do think the incumbents have seen the rapid growth in the fintech community, so they are starting to innovate very aggressively. But likewise, you have a lot of the fintech players which have been very innovative and now are scaling very quickly as well. So the growth that they're seeing and the number of customers that they're able to bring on and multiple solutions that they're able to offer those same customers, that portfolio is growing quite rapidly. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's a good answer.
I think it's a really, really interesting space, because when you look at some of these challenges, although, for my generation, sort of millennials, someone like Monzo, I use it, all my friends use it. But if you looked at their financial accounts last year, I'd be worried if they're going to be around next year. And I think a lot of the problems of these challenger banks is then trying to monetize what they're actually putting out there into the market. And yes, you can create a better digital experience with data, but millennials don't want to be paying a fortune to have their bank held, to have their money held anywhere. So I think it's a really, really interesting aspect. But I think as we move towards that future, I think Angela Strange, the partner at Anderson Horowitz, said something really interesting, which is ultimately every single company will derive a significant proportion of their revenue from financial services. And I think this is true, whether or not it's a supermarket like Amazon, who are now going fully digital with what they're doing, what Amazon entering the supermarket space, or a rental company like us, who ultimately do a lot of credit analysis, payment processing, and everything we can do around that space. But, with the ability of modern technologies and companies like, a company like Thought Machine up in London, who are actually the underlying provider to 3 or 4 fintech banks now, and give you the ability to spin out a bank in a few months, is, it's crazy the transformation we'll see across the space. But ultimately what it's led to is every single company can have a fintech element and be a fintech now.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, there's one question. I think we've kind of answered this, but I feel like I'm going to ask it anyway, because this is one that I think is quite one that I've heard from my students in the course I teach sometimes. And that was, the feeling that in some ways the fintech sector is really just startups at the moment. And do you have to be an entrepreneur to really get involved, or do you have to have that sort of mindset? Is there... and I think maybe that's changing, but I want to ask what your view on this is. Tom, do you maybe want to start this one?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. Although there's a lot of startups in this space and active in this space, I think you'll find the traditional players are spending a lot more money than those startups trying to counteract this space. And I probably can't talk too much. We're backed by Nationwide, a traditional financial service provider, and they are being a lot more innovative. They're opening up venture teams so that they can get involved with these organizations and start learning about how they can implement these techs within their organizations. And, one of there's almost an unfair playing ground here, in the sense that the traditional banks have all the data already. That they can start doing some awesome things for their customers, but they don't really know how, and they don't have the right infrastructure. So, they're based on all these legacy systems, and therefore it takes them a lot longer, and they can't be as agile as these new players. But these new players need to ultimately be able to build up a big data set very quickly in order to be able to add additional value to their users. So it is almost a catch-22 from both sides of the market. And at the moment, we are seeing the unique products of the challenger banks really start to pick up. I think, things like Monzo, it's ultimately just being able to see your spending, predict your habits. It's when you look at that traditional space and how it needs to change, it's almost going back to the ATM bank teller story, right? It led to more jobs, but the jobs changed. It led to a value add role. And I think the banks now need to realize that their role is not holding cash anymore. Holding cash is not a valuable service. It's a low value that anyone can do. They need to be working on, Barclays, I've been with for 20 years. They've got all of my financial data. Why aren't they screening my account and sending me, offers every week saying, you should be spending £20 less on your phone bill. We'll automatically swap your energy provider. And, this is what the challenger banks are now doing. With Monzo, you can set up your bills. You can never do that with any traditional bank. And it's because they have access to that data. They know how much you're spending on something, and therefore they can help alleviate that. But, with modern technologies, I'm not, I'd quite like to bring up open banking into this conversation, because I think open banking is going to have a radical transformation across the sector, because what it allows is for every challenger to start competing with the big players. Ultimately getting access to those large data sets means that you can start building out segregated products and start adding real value alongside. And it's something that the big banks weren't happy to do, but have been, forced to do by modern regulation.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to follow up with that?
And just adding on that, there are many great fintechs out there which are, in today's terms, massive organizations. They may have started off as something quite small 5-6 years ago, but some of them have thousands and thousands of employees, and they manage billions of pounds of deposits and hundreds of millions of revenue. And once you get to that level, I think it is pretty much a full-blown organization. They're at scale. They're large enough. The regulators are watching them very, very closely. So I do think the growth mindset is still there. But I also think that there are other types of skill sets, from a regulation perspective and whatnot, and risk and compliance side, which sometimes it has to be a bit more traditional as well, because, any wrong decision made from that perspective can have a huge ramification on those organizations.
Yeah.
Sorry, just you can carry on if you like.
No, I just completely agree. I think when you look at these challenger banks, one of the biggest things they've had problems with, or a role that they find very hard to fill and stay, is someone that's going to head up their compliance. Because they're trying to do things very quickly, it's often harder to build in robust systems.
Well, to follow up on that then, I do have a question. So you did speak about open banking. But I feel that open banking has been something that was introduced in European Union law. At least the initiative, so we have the British version of this, but we have this European legislation which sort of caused this to happen. What I want to ask here is regulation essentially standing in the way though of fintech, and is this move to reduce some of this regulation actually just opened up more financial risk? The reason I might ask this question is it was pointed out to me that Ant Group was suspended IPO in Shanghai and Hong Kong Stock Exchange early this month. So you might argue that there's more risk coming in with this deregulation. Anybody want to pick up on that?
I think it's as someone who's probably younger in this conversation, I would say the traditional players had quite a lot of risk going on. When you look at the last financial crisis in 2008 and how they were levering their books and finance, I think new challengers are actually going to clean up the market. They're going to create a bit more transparent market. They're going to make people a lot more aware of where people's money are, which we weren't aware of in the past. And I think, yes, that leads to systematic risk, but I think that's kind of the world we live in terms of the globalization aspects and how interconnected our banks are with our sort of current day-to-day lives and internationally.
Yeah, and from a UK perspective, just building on that, I do think the regulators here are a bit more forthcoming to innovation, so they're a bit more accepting of it. If you look at the digital sandbox and the regulatory sandboxes that have been launched, which allow companies to trial new initiatives in a bit more of a controlled environment, so that regulators can understand how this could be scaled, grown, and making sure that if something were to go wrong, it's not going to have a systemic problem within financial services. I think that's really, really important. I think the UK has been pretty open about that.
Hisham, do you have anything?
I don't have, actually. It's out of my...
Yeah, right. I just didn't want to leave you out of the conversation there.
No, I'm enjoying it.
But look, I don't want to continue this. It's just gone 11 o'clock, not 12 o'clock. It's just gone 11 o'clock. So I want to give maybe another 5 more minutes with this panel discussion. If you guys still have the availability.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
But speaking of regulation, speaking of something that I particularly enjoy, and I worked on cryptocurrencies for my PhD, and I still work in that area. Do you think that things like, so I want to talk about the technology in general. So we know we talk about AI a lot in these areas, but I sometimes feel that in fintech we talk about AI, but we're not really exactly what we're talking about. Might be might be more something like machine learning or something. And I want to talk about maybe the technology here, and do we expect to actually see something like cryptocurrencies or blockchain or this sort of thing taking off more than it has? Because there seems to be a lot of potential, but I don't know if we've seen so much uptake from just business to business and and so on in the next few years. And if I can ask, I'd like to ask Hisham and or Noor.
Yeah,
start with that.
I think you also can answer this, or at least explore this, given that you are our expert in blockchain, cryptocurrency. I think perhaps related to all what have been discussed up until now and has been discussed. 10 years ago, I believe, 10 years ago, the CEO of HP said, "Big data is like teenage sex. Everybody is obsessed about it. Everybody is talking about it. Everybody wants to know what it is, but nobody in reality does it." That is 10, 11 years ago. And now I can tell you from our students' perspective, when they go on to do their MSc dissertation project or undergrad project, or I want to do something related to blockchain, or I want to do something related to cryptocurrency. It is the sexy term, the sexy technology they want to exploit. I think it is there, and its potential is taking its share gradually, and we will reach a certain point where it becomes fundamental technologies. Now, just back to the AI and machine learning. the concept of AI is very, very general, and it does not really making sense of data, to simplify it, is only one aspect of AI. And so we prefer to call it a machine learning. You've got data, you need to find the patterns to classify them, and based on which you can make better decisions, better predictions, and so on and so forth. And now, I can tell you that current and conventional banks, organizations, financial service providers are applying machine learning, and they are hiring data scientists. When 10 years ago, they were not thinking about it. I worked on a project in ING in the Netherlands 10 years ago. They wanted just consultants in order to profile people to whom they would be offering mortgage with certain interest rates. Now ING is basically a computer science lab. They've got massive sector, and they only are hiring computer scientists, statisticians, and so on and so forth. So it will take its place in the coming years, the machine learning and the related technologies as well, the blockchain for security, for automation, and so on and so forth. I was thinking, if I may, and I'll make it a promise very short. I was thinking when it comes to regulation, maybe this is really a very, a very abstract way of thinking, that when I used to drive from here to France, I'm usually insured. My car is insured by a UK insurance company. And as soon as I get in France, I don't need to change my insurance whatsoever. And was thinking now, if we end up being out of this European Union, market and all that stuff, how is that going to be possible? And think about a technology like blockchain, for instance, whereby you can swap from one insurance to another insurance to another insurance instantly, regardless of the juristical and regulatory framework in the place where you are. This technology is needed. Without such technology, you can't come up with ideas like these or solve problems like these. Yeah.
Does anyone else want to pick up on this?
I'm sure I could talk all day about distributed ledger technology and cryptos as a storage of value. I think the world's at an interesting intersection, and we'll see what happens over the next 10 years. The fact that you've got the large tech players trying to enter that space, you've got international countries trying to enter that space. I think everyone is very aware that digital currencies are a lot more efficient than traditional currencies. But they're also worried and scared. We all know how the current world is ran in the traditional financial system. They're not going to let go of it that easily.
Anything from your side, Nirnit?
Yeah, no, I agree with the points. I think, if we round this up to kind of what Tom was saying earlier, the usage of the technology is great, but it has to be with the lens of looking at it from a customer centricity perspective. So, technology is probably one of the easiest things to replicate when you look at company to company and learning how it's done. But replicating that user journey and doing it in a very easy way for the customer to digest and use your solution, that's where the challenge lies. And these technology solutions are all great, but it has to be done with the lens of the customer in mind, because you can get really distracted and waste a lot of resources and financials trying to use these technologies. But if it's ineffective, it's just going to be a waste.
Great. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this up now. I just wanted to ask one final question, if I can, which was just that, if you can just quickly each say, if you could, this is just put this on you quickly. But imagine you're trying to give someone advice for breaking into the fintech sector. Generically, what would you say? Can I start with you, Tom?
Interesting. Network. Go speak to people in it. Go get in contact with people in it. Go learn from people. Everyone wants to give advice. Maybe post this current lockdown, ask to meet someone in the right space for a coffee and just pick their brains for 20 minutes. Do that with 10 people and you'll have a much better idea. You'll have people that are willing to do introductions. You'll have a good idea of how to get into the space.
Brilliant. Ollie?
I was gonna say, people having the ability to show their passion for the space and being able to kind of reinvent parts of the industry or depicting a problem that they see with the customer journey that they're trying to fix or be involved with fixing is really, really compelling. And to build on Tom's point, the best way to do that is to just go out, network. There's a lot of meetup events all across the country that you can go to, you can learn, you can talk to people. And I think the knowledge you'd be able to get, and even myself, I go to many of them before COVID, and I will once we get back into the offices. I attend these, and I find it very useful to learn about what companies are doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'd add this bit, which is think of value, the added value, always. I mean, I just remember, I think 2001, Steve Jobs came up on the stage and came up with this iPod. And he said, 500 songs in your pocket, full stop. That was the iPod. And did we need 500 songs? Well, we could not get the cassette and the radio with us in hand and all that stuff. Always think of what value, or learn to think why this should be done. Why is it useful? And what is useful or adding value? Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to end this session now. We got a message from Deborah. Very nice. So I'm going to end the session now, and then we're going to have a little break, and then we'll start the networking session for those who are online. I'm actually in the kitchen, so I did think what I should have done is made like an omelette or something, like a Saturday Kitchen Live interview, but maybe that was a good idea. Yeah, thanks, Hisham. I appreciate the little laugh. Okay, right. I'm going to close the session down now. Thanks so much for joining, guys. It was a really interesting session.